Hurricane Melissa struck Jamaica in late October, slamming the island as a powerful Category 5 storm.
And after that, Jamaica then faced flooding and widespread destruction. With a look, here's Rashawn Haynes.
Communities in Jamaica are still working to recover. Pierre Anyanzi, a member of WTVP's 40 Leaders Under 40 and a Peoria area network engineer and IT specialist, grew up in Jamaica. He says seeing the damage to his old neighborhood is heartbreaking.
Everything.
Across Jamaica, families are still clearing debris from what's left of their homes and businesses. Roofs are damaged, downed trees and piles of rubble block the streets. And you saw the damage. What was running through your mind?
I can't believe this is the place I grew up. This is not home. It's looked like a nightmare in a sense, yes, because things that you didn't think that wouldn't be destroyed is destroyed.
Mold covers the walls of his family home. Tarps replace ceilings, and very little inside could be saved.
So I was throwing out my childhood grade papers, photos, CDs, clothes.
Blocked roads made getting food difficult, but residents organized a food back initiative, walking through debris to bring back supplies to those in need.
Residents were able to get food, which will perhaps last them for 2 days.
During the storm, about 60 people took shelter in one local center. Many families remain displaced as rebuilding across the island continues.
In this community, at least 50% of the homes were completely destroyed.
As villages work to rebuild, other parts of the island are starting to reopen, specifically regions known for tourism.
Jamaicans combined with the international community from the United States, UK, Canada, South and Central America, other Caribbean islands, everybody came in to help Jamaica in our time of need, and the recovery subsequently has been swift.
According to Philip Rose, Jamaica's Deputy Director of Tourism, all 3 international airports have been reopened, along with 80% of hotels and attractions. Popular destinations like Montego Bay and Kingston have already welcomed over 300,000 visitors.
Tourism is the true economic driver of Jamaica.
Tourism accounts for roughly 30% of Jamaica's economy, but recovery is uneven across the island.
They started rebuilding a lot of homes, a lot of roofs start coming back, but there are still those folks that don't have the resources to build, and those are the ones that were my concern. But they are resilient in every way.
With the roads now open, there's a consistent flow of food, but residents across Jamaica say their greatest needs are water, electricity, and supplies to rebuild. As for Pierre, he's watching the recovery closely, doing what he can to help Jamaican families get the resources they need. You can learn more about his efforts and how you can support on our website.